I'm sure you've heard this week is a big week as we are rolling right along into mid-2025 already, which is crazy, by the way, but also rolling right into one of the next big dog transits of 2025 that is changing everything. And that is Saturn, finally moving out of Pisces after the last few years and moving into the sign of Aries, which is a very different energy. And Saturn is also in fallen Aries, so it's going to be pretty interesting. But other than that, I do believe that this week is actually a very magical week. I think we're in a really magical time right now. If you can be open to it, if you are in the flow of things, like we talked a lot about for the first few months of this year. But I do believe that this is a very magical week. The bigger transit happening this week is Saturn moving into Aries, like I said, at the very end of this week. But we do have a few trines and other little interesting things happening that we are going to talk about and that we're going to go over that I think really just kind of sets the tone. And I think we're starting Saturn and Aries on honestly a really positive tone. And this is just going to be a preview of Saturn and Aries. He's only going to be in Aries for about 3 months. And he is going to be there with Neptune, okay, which I think is going to add a very different flavor to Saturn and Aries than we would maybe usually have if Saturn was just there by itself. So I know a lot of people want to be very doom and gloom about this transit, but I am honestly more optimistic. And I think it's so interesting because it's Saturn and Neptune, literally, like these are the two sides of it. Like Saturn is very like doom and gloom and oh my God, there's going to be really dark things that happen. And there definitely could be. I mean, every transit will bring a light and dark. But then there's Neptune that's like, but on some higher level, it is all great. We're all one. Yes. Become one with Saturn and Aries. Okay. And so anyway, so I guess we'll all just have to wait and see. I personally am excited for it, excited to see what comes, what I know by this weekend, okay? So anyways, with that being said, welcome to the weekly horoscope, where we go over your badass astrology for the week ahead. We talk about all the transits I think are important or that catch my eye, that are telling some kind of story here, and how to work with these things, how to just cruise right along through them, and how to really just honestly live them, experience them, witness these things in your life, because it is really such a beautiful experience when you can learn to do that. So I'm going to shut up now. I'm not going to shut up, but I'm going to shut up about all that. And we are going to go ahead and put my screen up here so we can go ahead and start this video. Alrighty. Okay. So you should be able to see my chart on the screen. On May 20th, which is Tuesday this week. And again, brief disclaimer, you will likely feel a lot of these different things I talk about at various different times of the week. So just because I'm talking about Tuesday doesn't mean you're only going to feel these things on Tuesday. Because on Tuesday, what's happening is the sun is moving into Gemini, meaning that we're going to be feeling these things for the next several weeks until it moves into Cancer. Alrighty, so again, a lot of these transits are going to be felt all through the week. Just because they go exact on these certain days that I say doesn't mean that you haven't already been feeling them. So keep that in mind. Some of you will already be relating to the stuff I'm saying. You've already been feeling it. You're already noticing it. Maybe you've been noticing it for like a week now. That is normal. And so I just wanted to point that out. But nonetheless, to keep it organized, I try to just go through the dates that they're all happening exact. So the sun is moving into Gemini though, which we will feel starting on Tuesday and for the next few weeks, as it will be Gemini season. So the sun is moving through the last mutable sign of spring as it is preparing to enter into summer. We will definitely notice a lot more hotter weather coming in, especially, I mean, depending on where you live in the world. While we are also kind of cycling out of spring weather, out of the rain and, you know, all of that, which is why Gemini is a mutable sign and has a lot of the qualities that it does. The twins, it is a mutable air sign. So it is all about the thinking realm, the logical realm, the learning realm, the speaking realm, the verbal realm. Okay, so this is writing, speaking, you know, books, literature, games, you know, thinking games and puzzles. Very, very Gemini energy. This is where we become a little bit more curious about things in our lives, where we learn to have a different perception, where we learn to change the way that we are thinking. And, you know, something I was actually thinking about earlier today, which really reminds me of a kind of Gemini thing, is the fact that our relationship with something is really all about our perception of it, right? And so our relationship with money, our relationship with another person, our relationship with our job, our relationship with our business, our relationship with our life, our relationship with ourselves is usually painted by some story, some perception, some experience that we are having of that thing. Because, like, and I've always thought this was like so fascinating. I'm like a little bit obsessed with the topic of perception, but I've always thought this was fascinating how, like, when you first move in a place, you can be like, oh my gosh, like you can see it one way and you can be super comfortable there and you can be like, oh, this is great. I love this place. And then after you've been there for however long, I don't know, like by the time you move out, it's like you see it completely differently. Like your perception of it may be completely different than what it was. It's like, ew, I don't like this place anymore, or I don't think it's the greatest anymore, or whatever the case may be. It doesn't even have to be like a place that you live. It could be a person. It could be something that you once saw one way and now you see it a completely different way. It's like how it is painted in your mind has changed, okay? This is Gemini energy, and this is why Gemini gets shit so much of the time for being like two-faced or flaky or changing their mind or whatever in the surface level astrological community of, basically magazine horoscope astrology. It's because, though, it's a very basic modern way to paint Gemini because of the mutable error. And because people don't understand how to appreciate the beauty and the art of changing thy mind, okay? The freedom of changing thy mind. And that's why you can, I know, I've had experience with many Geminis, but that's why a Gemini can tell you 1 minute that their favorite color is pink and 5 minutes later it changes and they've now changed it to blue. And in that moment, what happens, or in that time that it changes, is their perception changes, or they learn new information, or they learn new facts, or they have a new experience that changes their mind. And so really, Gemini, in a lot of ways, there's a lot of lessons in Gemini around the beauty of changing one's mind. But with the sun here, and Gemini, lighting up this Gemini space and whatever house you have Gemini in, which you'll start noticing a lot of themes for starting this week, it is so much about the perception because the sun is very much about the perception, how we see things. The sun is light. It is about our eyes, how we see, and it lights things up so we can see. So it's like, how are we seeing certain things in our lives? And Gemini really invites us to, coming out of Taurus, where things are a bit more dense, stubborn, slow, but feel good and are comfortable, things can start going a little bit quicker once we move into Gemini because it is an air sign. And what can happen is we can start noticing that we become a lot more busier, or our minds become a lot more busy. We start noticing that we are having more interactions with information, conversations, our environments, things are changing, there's events, all kinds of different things start happening. And so it's really a good time to be lighthearted, to be curious, and to not take anything too seriously. Gemini is ruled by Mercury. Mercury has been known to be kind of like a trickster, like, Loki energy. And so with this kind of archetype, it is good to kind of find the humor in things and not take things so seriously, and to have fun, to have lighthearted experiences instead of, looking at everything through this really deep, super heavy lens. Now, as I say that, the sun will trine Pluto later this week, which we'll get to, but we'll get to talking about that. But okay, moving on to Wednesday. So on Wednesday, May 21st, is when we have Venus finally trining Mars exactly. Now, we talked a lot about this last week because I knew we were going to start feeling this energy by last week, at least most people that are tapped into this, because they were only a couple degrees apart then. And so, but what I want to kind of add to what I said last week is that Venus is in Mars's sign. So she's kind of already she's already kind of in this like weird receptive energy with Mars, where she's basically, chilling in his sign, in his home. Mars is over here in Leo, where he is very concerned with courage and bravery and notoriety and righteousness and morals and doing the right thing and being, having chivalry, all of that. Whereas Venus is in Aries, like it is all about confidence and conviction, and she's learning how to kind of flirt with conflict in a lot of ways. The way that I kind of see this is like Venus is in Mars's home, and she's kind of like, you know what? I know that you're trying to like be, I know that you're trying to be like an honorable presence here, Mars, but I think that we need to do it in a better way, is kind of what I feel with this trine. They're working together to do something in a better way. Our desires, our instincts, our motivation, our inspiration, our attraction, and our passions and our drive is all kind of coming together here in this like hot, sexy, fiery, spicy, flirty, kind of fun chaos, like this feels very fun. This feels very spicy. This feels very fiery. This feels very flirty. It's like Venus, because Venus is in the superior position here, like I said last week. So Venus is learning how to flirt with conflict, and she's also flirting with Mars through using some of his own tactics. Okay, so if Mars is, like being in Aries, she's got to play by certain rules, but she's got to also find where they meet her, because she can't completely change what she's about either. She's about attraction. She's about flirtation. She is about doing things that you actually feel good about. Things that feel good, things that bring you a sense of fun and pleasure in some way, shape, or form. And so this is really about going after what you desire. And I really feel like not feeling as shameful about it, not feeling like you need to hide it, but almost feeling like you can own it. Owning who you are and owning what you desire is what this feels like. Mars in Leo wants to own it. It doesn't want to hide. It wants to be seen. It wants to be able to be authentic. It wants to be able to stand in its truth, to stand in notoriety and say, this is who I am, and take it or leave it. Venus is in Aries, like, I desire this and I want this. And some of the things I desire may be confrontational or may be edgy or maybe, may not be considered what is good or pleasurable or likable by other people, but it's what I desire. And so this is you kind of, I feel like a lot of us coming into some kind of like ownership energy of what we want and what we desire. And we're willing to own it. We're willing to stand in it, even when it may, seem like it may cause a conflict or it may not benefit everybody else. Because again, these are two fire signs, very much being like alive and about the spirit and, about brightness, putting ourselves out there, being seen, going after what it is that you want. Aries being very singular, Leo being very self-oriented, self-focused. These are self-focused signs. So this is so much about owning what you desire, even when it is, potentially confrontational, even when, other people may not like it. And so I really think that this is kind of like a beautiful energy where we can learn to use some friction as a means to get what we desire. Or maybe it even is some friction that we desire. Maybe it even is something that is more edgy or something that does challenge us more, that is what we desire. And Mars is willing to do this for Venus with the trine and with her being in his sign. And so it's almost like the way that I just kind of envisioned this is like Mars is on a trip away from home and he is visiting the king, Leo, Your Majesty. And he's in the sign of the king. And when he's around the king, he has to be, honorable and courageous and respectful and moral and all of those things. And so he is, definitely getting his majesty honorable embodiment practice on, because that is what Leo is all about, embodiment. Also Aries somewhat about that as well. What are you embodied and what energy are you carrying? What are you embodied and what are you bringing to the table? So he has left home and he has left Venus at his place. Now Venus is like, okay, Mars, you live in like a dungeon and all I see are like weapons that you use to train with, and there's really not much here for me to do. So Venus, starts, decorating the swords and making them look more stylish and, starts a fire and is sitting by the fireplace. And then she starts kind of trying on these swords and she starts kind of like, getting some practice in. And Venus and Mars come into communication for the first time in a bit. And Mars is like, oh, Venus has taught herself, how to basically deal with conflict, or maybe to fight in her own way. Maybe she uses a bow and arrow or something, or, I don't know. I don't know. But basically, Mars is like, oh, okay, I see you, Venus, trying on my stuff in some way, but making it your own, And so anyway, what I basically mean by this is that there's something that we are flirting with that is edgy, that is potentially, a bit, confrontational, that may be challenging or may be somewhat of a challenge. Venus is also coming up on Chiron. She's still, about 7 degrees away at this point, but she's building to come up on Chiron here. And so either way, there's some kind of friction involved that we are flirting with. And we're really starting to get aligned and embodying what we really desire. But Mars is like, okay, are you going to back it up? What are you going to do about it? Are you going to own it? Are you going to, change or become who you need to become to get this thing that you desire? Like, what are the action steps and how are you embodied in it to get what you desire and own what you desire and become what you desire? Become maybe the match to what you desire. Like, what is the game plan? So now you know what you desire, you know what you want, you know your worth, or what you're capable of, or what you feel you deserve, or whatever. You know the quality of what it is that you want. You know what you're feeling allured to, attracted to, pulled by, right? Venus is a feminine planet. It's about magnetism. What are you being pulled by? What you want wants you. But Mars and Leo, the masculine energy, is like, are you going to take action on it? Yeah, you have become more focused on what is good for you. Yeah, you've become more focused on your desires. And even though it potentially brings up certain challenge in your life, but Mars and Leo is giving us the courage and the confidence, the leadership, the honor to go about it in the way that we desire. Mars and Leo is like, all right, let's go do it. Let's actually make the change. Let's actually own it. Okay, so that's Venus trine Mars. And again, that happens on Wednesday. So moving on to Thursday. Thursday, we have kind of a smaller little transit going on that I wanted to talk about, but it is the Sun sextile Neptune. And, this is so interesting because, this is happening as Saturn is pretty much right there on the cusp as well, 29 degrees Pisces, which we talked a lot about last week about Saturn at 29 degrees. And having just kind of sitting there accumulating all this wisdom. And we can feel like this too, like there's so many things that are coming full circle or that are making sense, or time can feel very, very odd and very, very strange right now. I've heard that by many people, and I've myself felt that. Time can feel very, very strange right now, or like it's moving too fast or very slow, or like it's expanding, or like timelines are merging, whatever you want to call it. This is why Saturn, the literal marker of time, the planet of time, karma, is that used to be a lot of the things that Neptune is in traditional Hellenistic astrology before we knew of Neptune as a planet, which I think the ancient astrologers knew that there was more than Saturn and all that anyway, which is another discussion. But Saturn is what is beyond the bounds. It is the boundary and what is beyond the bounds, which is why it rules both Capricorn and Aquarius, because it is what is on the inside and the outside. It is the outcast and the in crowd. It is both. And so with the planet of boundaries and what is beyond the boundaries and time meeting at Neptune, the planet of the higher realms, the higher planes, dissolving things, unifying things, all of that, we can feel a lot of really big timeline shifts that are happening right now, collective shifts that are happening right now. This is really big. The sun goes on to kind of sextile Neptune as soon as it pretty much moves into Gemini, but it'll go exact on Thursday. And we will have even more of a feeling of this. Now, it is a sextile, so this isn't like a super potent in your face kind of feeling, but it is a little bit more behind the scenes, subtle. But it is kind of this feeling as like we are starting to feel like maybe we are more in sync with something. Maybe you have some more synchronicities, or you're noticing certain signs, synchronicities, dreams, patterns that are playing out in your life. Or maybe you have this subtle feeling that something higher than you is backing you, that maybe you're able to kind of have faith a little bit more on this day, even when things don't make sense. And that's the thing with Gemini. Gemini wants things to make sense. Neptune is not about making sense of things, but these two are sextiling. So it's kind of saying that, like, hey, if you just believe in yourself, it'll all work out. Neptune and Aries, belief in the self, faith in the self. Sun and Gemini. Also Jupiter and Gemini, even though it's a little bit later on in Gemini, they're still in the same sign. So faith in the self is, I think, something really big that we could see with this sextile, Sun-Neptune sextile going on Thursday. So I wanted to kind of bring that up as well, because that's really huge. And then Saturday is the big dog day. Saturday, like Saturday night into Sunday morning, is when Saturn will be moving into Aries. But first, we are going to talk about the Sun trining Pluto, which happens exact on Saturday. Again, we'll likely be feeling this even before this on the days leading up to Saturday. But like I said, the Sun in Gemini wants lighthearted information. It wants to kind of say on the surface a little bit, like, pay attention to the facts, the logic, the intellectual side of things. Again, it wants things to make sense. It wants there to be organization and thought, even though it usually is often struggling to find that at times. But the Sun in Gemini trining Pluto in Aquarius is really interesting, because this is kind of a deeper energy that is going on, and also a more drawn out story that has been going on since the end of January, when we had the Sun-Pluto conjunction this year. And then last month we had the Sun-Pluto square, which was kind of like the first turning point since that conjunction. Now it's like we have insight, clarity, awareness into the deeper things that are going on with Pluto and Aquarius. So these particular first few days that the Sun is in Gemini, it is a little bit deeper. It is a little bit more introspective. It is a little bit more aware of the deeper story that is going on here with Pluto and Aquarius, and Pluto and the Sun and Pluto, and we are kind of realizing where maybe some kind of deeper subconscious programming, some kind of deeper social, societal stuff, some kind of deeper fears, and some kind of deeper matrix, I want to say. Some kind of deeper programming, some kind of deeper conditioning, some kind of deeper matrix. It's like we're really realizing what we have allowed to control us. And there's some kind of awareness around something kind of deeper that's really, really happening here. Anywhere from Tuesday to Saturday. These could be really conversations that usually, yes, we would want to stay on the surface with for the Gemini Sun, for the Sun in Gemini. But it's like we're able to kind of take these deeper things that are going on with Pluto and Aquarius, whether they be about some kind of deeper matrix that we've been stuck in, or deeper societal programming, or deeper societal conditioning, or deeper societal problems, or some kind of deeper relational problems with other people in some way, shape, or form, or some kind of deeper fears regarding other people in the world and the people in our lives, or our social fears, etc. Whatever deeper stuff is going on that is getting kind of revealed to us by Saturday to some degree, it's like we're able to take it and see with a clear perspective, see it with a clear eye. And that helps us have a clear vision and a clear mind and clear thought around it moving forward. And so that is what I believe that Saturday looks like with the Sun and Pluto trine. Now, some of the other ways this could play out on a more practical level could be conversations that you are having with someone where they just like, I almost feel like this to me kind of looks like where you have a conversation with someone and maybe you're not sure at first if they are going to be on your wavelength. I actually have this whole like Aquarius moon thing because I'm an Aquarius moon, and where I talk about like being on the same wavelength with people. Like you can just feel it when you're having a conversation with them. And this day is so much about electrifying conversations, like big conversations. So this is really interesting, but you can feel it when you're having a conversation with someone when they like truly understand you, and it's just the energy is just a match, and you can tell you guys are on the same wavelength. You guys are like talking and you're on like the same plane, whatever plane that is. And it's not that they're like, if it doesn't feel like that, it's not that you're like higher, they're lower, or vice versa. It's just like it's not clicking. And you just know it's not going to click. And I have had plenty of conversations like that with people, like especially in like, my real everyday to day life where I am a weirdo, and like last week I brought up being the person at like the dinner party, the like nice social dinner party that like brings up the conversation of like aliens and conspiracy theories. It wants to go super deep, and everybody's like, oh no. And I know I made it sound like a bad thing, but it's really not. Like, I'm that person, so I get it. Like, I get both sides of that. I was trying to kind of just explain both sides of that. But this is like, you are the person that brings up, or somebody else is the person that brings up aliens and conspiracy theories at some kind of birthday party, or a party that is not as like, proper in some way, and you're like, hell yeah, me too. That is what this is like. We are vibing in a very social way on Saturday. Like, it's kind of like we finally like are either with people or having conversations where it's like, yes, zzz, it just matches. It's like electric hits, and we're just like, we're vibing, And the other reason for this is because Mercury up here in good old Taurus, which rules the sun in Gemini over here, is meeting with Uranus. So we had Sun Uranus last week, which I think was very, especially in a Venus ruled sign, I think it felt pretty good for me. It did. It was a very liberating, exciting energy, feeling like things are new or something's different. Like, there's something different in the air, and I feel like a lot of people can feel it. It feels like we are entering into like a whole new time. Like, there's a massive shift happening that we're right in the middle of, that we're not out of yet. We're right in the middle of. And when we get to that new massive beginning, it's going to be so different and so new, but it feels so positive, in my opinion. I feel it to be very, very positive. I feel like a lot of the divisions that we see today are going to be dissolved, especially with this Saturn Neptune conjunction. Now, it will be in Aries, but it will move back into Pisces. They will both kind of move back into Pisces together and stay side by side. But either way, I think that the joke is going to be up. When Saturn, I know I'm getting a little ahead of myself here, but when Saturn moves into Aries, I really think that there's going to be kind of the matrix, there's so many matrices that are being exposed. There's so many that are falling apart, and there's so many that you can like literally get plugged into and like sucked into, and you will literally see that as your reality, and your reality will reflect that back to you, and you will argue and defend it until you are blue in the face. Okay, like, you will literally argue against what you want to defend the matrix that you are stuck in. I can't because of this. I can't because of that, because we only see our limitations. Like, I can't because of the economy. I can't because my parents were mean to me, or I have childhood trauma, or like whatever, right? Like, we always will. There's so many different ones that you can get stuck in, and I've been there. I still go there sometimes. Like, I'm not saying I'm completely like free or Jesus Christ over here either. Okay, so, but this is what it's all about, is like unplugging from these different matrices that we get into, whether it's like the scarcity matrix, okay, or whether it's like the matrix of believing that the world is exactly how you've been told it was, like the world is exactly like it was that you learned in school. Whether it is, there's just been so many things, whether it's the whole atheist matrix, or there's a religious matrix, or there's just so many different matrices. There's probably even a spiritual matrix, but it's more so about like these kind of collective, it's like so many people get caught in these things, that in these matrices that are these certain ones that they gather more energy, and they're that much easier to get caught in, because then we're around certain people, or we see certain things that influence our thinking, and then boom, we're sucked in, and then we believe this certain thing, and then we start seeing it everywhere, and then we start seeing evidence of it everywhere and everywhere and everywhere and everywhere, and so we think that it's true, and then that's what like an awakening is. Most people refer to an awakening, and the reason I'm going over this is because the astrology right now is literally pointing to this. Mercury on Uranus, awakening, okay? This is like, I really think like this looks like very like, subtle astrology. Like, we have Mercury, Uranus conjunct every year, I get it, but not with Saturn at 29 Pisces, about to move into Aries, conjunct Neptune at 1 degrees Aries, like Pluto in Aquarius. There's so many big, like, everybody knows that if you're in astrology, you fucking know that this year, every astrologer is talking about 2025, okay? And people can feel like that aren't even into astrology, know that this year is big and have been saying it, feel it. Like, there's something about this year where everyone's like, everything's changing. Like, and it really is. It's like, this is what an awakening is. We awaken from that old way of thinking that like, was like, oh my God, how did I like not see this before? Or how it literally, like when you have an awakening, you know what that feels like. It feels like you just unplugged from a video game, like you were just asleep. And that's why people call it an awakening, because it literally feels like the movie The Matrix, where he wakes up and realizes that wasn't even real. Okay. And like, this is what I'm talking about. It's like we all have these different matrices, these different thought matrices that we plug into, and they're so popular because they're like, there's so many of them in the collective consciousness because we all plug into them. You know, there's so many people in one matrix that see the world in a similar way that it becomes, you know, really big. And because I think about this goes back to the perception conversation of the sun moving through Gemini now, and you know, Mercury enters Gemini on Sunday, which we'll get to in a minute, but like, it really is all about your perception. Your perception paints everything in your life. And this is where the whole you create your whole own reality comes from, you know, in manifestation circles and stuff, because, you know, two people can have like the same experience, but one can view it as bad or, you know, neutral, and the other one can view it as like the best experience of their life, you know, like it meant something to them, you know, like two people can have like, you know, their coffee spill on them before they even got to drink of it. And one person can laugh about it and be like, oh, well, you know, and the other person can be like, my day is effing ruined and I hate everyone, you know, like it's like whatever we tell ourselves, the stories that we have around these different events and why they happen and what they mean to us and what they say about us and what other people think about it. And like all of this stuff really paints our experience of reality. And that is so much of what Gemini is about. Like Aries is like, yeah, I'm here. I'm going to do me. I'm going to take action. I'm going to go for what I want. Taurus is like, okay, I'm starting to get what I want. I'm starting to get kind of comfortable here. And this is great. Gemini is like, but what's the experience around it? You know, like, are you like, how do you perceive it? Why do you like it? Why did you want it? Like, what is the story you're telling yourself around it? Like, what else do you want? You know, like all of that. And so anyway, Mercury conjuncts Uranus on Saturday as well, too, in the sign of Taurus. And this is definitely like potentially us kind of, again, like shifting out of some perspective or old story or this massive light bulb moment or even massive epiphany or awakening that some could even have that pull them out of a stuck mindset that they have been in, or a mindset that, you know, they had been in because of their own stubbornness in some way, shape, or form, with this being in Taurus. And it's like opening our minds to something. So Mercury Uranus is like electric conversations, electric information, electric downloads, you know, like channeling, like people could channel, see, like, you know, telepathic communication, have synchronicities, have mental breakthroughs, you know, just like, holy shit, my mind just totally changed, and it be very sudden and surprising. This is a lot of sudden and unexpected energy with Uranus. It shakes things up. And with it being Mercury, it wants to liberate, and you know, Mercury is about how we perceive things in our minds and logic and, you know, the messenger, how we speak about things as well. And so Uranus wants to liberate us. Uranus wants to free us and break us out of certain things that we are stuck in. And so whether that is a light bulb moment that you have that finally breaks you free of some pattern you've been stuck in, a piece of information comes your way, a conversation, a surprising, you know, change of plans is going to be another big one. Verbal surprises, you know, you hearing from somebody or having a conversation with somebody, or a sudden phone call or a sudden text message or seeing something online, getting something in the mail. These are all very mercurial things, but sudden changes of plans. Like this also is electricity, like literal electricity, and news, sudden unexpected news that really comes out. Now it is a conjunction, so usually I would think it was going to be a bit more positive here. We'll be starting to sextile Saturn as they conjunct in Pisces. So I think that this is kind of bringing some maturity with it. And it's like lessons learned in some kind of way. And I do feel like just for some reason, and usually just because conjunctions are, they're a combination of energy. And this Sun-Uranus conjunction this past weekend felt similarly, where there is just this positive, magical energy in the air. And I think that this is going to be very magical for innovation, conversations, writing, speaking, plans, etc., money, trade. We're definitely going to see those things in the news with this conjunction. Inventions, or, you know, new inventions or announcements of, you know, new plans or new ways of doing something that are very innovative or ahead of its time, or, you know, futuristic in some way, et cetera, et cetera. either way, it's some kind of liberating electric energy that really comes through. And the Mercury Uranus conjunction is, I think, going to be a pretty decent breakthrough change shift for many people. And I think it's going to be, for the most part, positive, honestly. I think it's kind of like an upgrade in the way that we've been perceiving something, or in the plans that we have for our long-term goals, our money, our investments, what we find abundance in, or where we find abundance, pleasure, worth, value in our lives, conversations surrounding value and priorities, etc., and kind of having the inspiration to change them. This is a very inspirational transit as well. And so, again, last but not least, on Saturday, the big dog transit of all is Saturn, finally moving into Aries for the first round of a preview that we're going to get for the next 3 months. Now, it's, one thing to talk about just Saturn and Aries, but I do think that this is going to be a very different flavor of Saturn and Aries because, again, Saturn is in there with Neptune. He is not just in there by himself. He's in there with Neptune, and that's definitely going to add a very different layer on top of this. That's going to change things. It's going to change the way that Saturn plays out here, in my opinion. I mean, it would for anyone. So again, and I think I'm going to do, like I've been saying, I think I'm going to do like a whole separate video on this, or at the very least, if I don't have time to do a whole separate video on this week, I will talk about this in the upcoming horoscopes for June. But I do really truly think that Saturn moving into Aries and joining Neptune is there's so many layers to this, right? There's like the individual layer to this on how it's going to affect most of us on like a personal level. Then there's like the collective stuff. Then there's like just the spiritual aspect of this, because both planets are deeply spiritual and teach very spiritual lessons. And so there's just so many different ways that this is going to go, but I really believe on like a grander scale, and talking about a grander scale because Saturn is, the last planet that we can see with the naked eye, and Neptune is an outer planet. So this is really all about the grander scale here. And, it has to do with really like dissolving timelines, dissolving old karma, and I think starting new karma. It's almost like a spiritual reset in like a lot of ways, but different. Like not a reset and where it's reset back to its original state, but there's differences about it, right? Like that's kind of the feeling that I'm getting of this. I think that we're kind of going to also, like a big thing with this is we're going to, like, there's going to be this dissolving of us pointing the finger or blaming things outside of ourselves, because Saturn in Aries is like, we've got to take responsibility, we've got to mature, we've got to take responsibility for ourselves. Neptune shows us the higher octave of doing that, the higher meaning of doing that, the needing to surrender to be able to do that, and understanding that that is the path, et cetera, et cetera. But I think that, there's going to be this time of like people are like going to realize their part in something bigger than themselves. And it's going to be less about it's this person's fault, it's this system's fault, it's this thing's fault, it's like whatever. It's going to be like about personal responsibility, personal accountability, personal growth, personal development, personal, your personal views, and less about kind of this group orientation or this group thinking. Pluto being in Aquarius is also making sure of that. Pluto in Capricorn really started kind of dismantling a lot of the structures. It really pretty much made people lose. I wouldn't say made is the wrong word, but for lack of a better word, during Pluto in Capricorn, a lot of people lost a lot of trust in governmental systems and structures and, basically people in power and the way that things had been going. The trust was kind of wiped out in some way or another completely for most people. I mean, not completely. There's some people that still, do. But for the majority of people, I would say we started seeing a lot of the dark secrets, the skeletons in the closet. Things came out about a lot of the high pillars and structures of our society. So Pluto and Capricorn left us with massive distrust in the structures that we used to think were really important or were once valuable. or that we once needed to survive, that were once a necessity. And we started realizing like, hey, we're being played, or there's so many other things going on here. Now, Pluto in Aquarius is revealing to us and leaving us with a distrust of the systems and the kind of organized communities, the corrupted, organized kind of groups that we have, which is why we're seeing all of this stuff with the Diddy case and how it's connected to like human trafficking. And like, this is very Pluto in Aquarius, like the darker side of these kind of corrupted groups and connections, and how it's kind of all connected and potentially causing a lot of issues within our world, within our society. And it's going to make people a lot more distrusting of, again, like just, certain groups of people, and, being in some kind of like, group or following one narrative just because a group is, or because it's popular, or because it's trendy. Like there's going to be more of a massive push towards the individuality, doing things for yourself, like being the pioneer. Aries is more of the rebel a lot of the times, in my opinion, than Aquarius. Aries is the pioneer, going where no one else has gone. Aries is the one that is like leading the pack, and not even leading the pack, but even just going on its own. If no one else wants to go, it's like, okay, I'll go, I'll do it. Aries is the one that that it's conflict, right? It stands up for what it wants, what it wants to take action on. It does what it wants to do. It's free spirited, and it's a trailblazer. And so Aries is a massive rebel of the zodiac. And so with us having Saturn moving into Aries, Saturn ruling Aquarius where Pluto's at, I think that it's going to be very interesting. I think it's going to be very interesting. And we're either going to get some people that are like rebels without a cause. But I think on the more positive note, because I do feel very optimistic about it, we are going to have to rise into taking responsibility of ourselves and our lives and our views and our beliefs, and not allowing Pluto and Aquarius and the Matrix to control our minds and to sabotage us. But basically it's us sabotaging ourselves, because it's all our choice to plug into that or not. It's our choice to follow and partake in, or kind of get close to things that are corrupted or not. And Saturn in Aries is all about, again, personal responsibility, personal accountability, leadership, and a lot of times taking on responsibility before you feel ready, taking on some kind of duty or heavy weight before you feel that you're truly ready for it. But that is what this time is about. It's like we've got to allow our expectations, or the things that we once knew, or the things that we once felt like it should be like, or whatever, these old matrices that we've been plugged into, we've got to let them crumble. They will naturally crumble on their own. And that is how we rise into a more sovereign place within ourselves and learn to lead ourselves, instead of expecting the world or other people or everybody else to lead us. I think a lot of people are going to kind of, just start doing their own thing more with Saturn and Aries. And again, this is only going to be a 3-month preview of Saturn and Aries, and then Neptune's going to move back into Pisces as well in October. So this isn't like full on happening right as Saturn enters Aries. It's probably going to take us the whole Saturn transit to look back on this and see like if it was actually accurate, or if like what it all brought and all of that. So anyway, but yeah, so Saturn will move into Aries, Sunday or Saturday night into Sunday, depending on where you are in the world. And then on Sunday, last but not least, Mercury will move into Gemini, its home sign that it rules. And so that will be nice. Mercury will be at home with the sun, and we will be seeing things, perceiving things, and thinking very clearly. We will be able to communicate. I think we will feel a lot more inspired. We will have a lot more things to focus on. We are going to be feeling a lot more curious and inspired by different things that excite us or bring us a sense of joy into our lives. And so we may find ourselves a lot more focused on new subjects, or even just subjects of, that we've always liked or new interest, hobbies, things like that, social situations, events, people, learning new things. Mercury in Gemini is going to be very, very good for speaking, speaking and learning, obviously. So that is what is going on this week, you guys. Let me know down below if you stayed until here. Comment badass alien down below. I appreciate you guys so, so much. Thank you. And yeah, I will see you guys in the next one.